Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Thanks one more time for clicking on that link. Thank you for joining me in this next series of my Synthesis Toolbox Kit. I will be touching on Toolbox Kit number 5, Epigenetics and Eugenics. This is going to rock your boat. Fasten your seatbelt and get ready to hear things that will stimulate quite a lot of um, excitement in you, will propel you into a level of existence beyond what you currently have. I'm not saying that to disregard the information you have, but I'm saying it from a perspective of a person who has personally experienced a chronic illness and has applied this particular pill in reversing his illness. I'm going to make a bold statement here, and my bold statement is to do with this particular pill. When you do understand epigenetics and apply it, having that presence of mind, you will never, ever, ever need to take another pill that is a petrochemical, or another pill that is pharmaceutical, another pill that is being pushed out to us through big pharma. You will never ever need to take such a pill again. Meaning, you will not need to be chronically ill or be a victim or die from the third leading cause of death globally. This is the third leading cause of death, which big pharma does not want you to know about. It's been encoded in a Latin word. It's been encoded in a word that is not thrown around frequently. It's iatrogenic death. In layman's term, it means death by medical errors or from wrong prescription. It's the third leading cause of death globally. Like I said in my first podcast, do not take anything I say for gospel truth. Do your own research. Now I've made a bold statement. Now it's time to build this tribe and make it a tribe that understands epigenetics. Can we peep into the second leading cause of death globally? Yes, your guess is as good as mine. Cancer. You do not need to fear or die of cancer. Never. And I'll make another bold statement here, making the second bold statement in the space of 4 minutes. There is no gene. There is nothing such as a gene that causes cancer. We have been fed with bull crap. I see myself as a student of lexicon, and that's why I'm bringing out this particular pill, epigenetics. Now, the Greek prefix epi in epigenetics implies features that are on top of or in addition to. So it's kind of like on top of. So in decomposing what epigenetics means, it means above genes, above the gene theory. And that is what I'm going to be talking about today. I fell into the common trap we all face, that I was going to die of cancer, just like my dad did. I termed this genetic. I thought to myself, I must have inherited or inherited my father's genes, in the sense of he died of cancer. Okay, granted it was prostate cancer. So does that mean I'm also going to suffer the same thing? I was a caregiver to my dad during his last few years. as a cancer sufferer. In my mind, I saw my life literally ebb away gradually. So as I believe this could be a genetic and something I've inherited, being an hereditary illness, I then thought liver cancer. I was suffering from a fatty liver. I had liver fibrosis at that stage due to heavy dosing of petrochemicals. And I knew then that if I did nothing about it, it could advance to liver fibrosis, which is this kind of the liver if it keeps going unchecked, which in itself will result in liver cirrhosis. Now, in my case, as is mostly the case of anyone taking as many as 3 to 20 petrochemical drugs each day, my liver was getting damaged. I eventually had liver fibrosis. So I decided to research on genes and epigenetics, and I found solutions to my medical conditions. I realized that the new science, but it's been called the new science, epigenetics, it's about 30 years old. I realized that epigenetics was one pill that my specialists were not giving me. And I realized that this one pill was the one pill that I needed to investigate, research, and learn about. So I did just one thing, and I'm going to share this one thing in the course of our discourse on the toolbox kit synthesis. What was that one thing I did? Lifestyle change. Adopting and using daily the 9 pills in my 9 toolbox kit. In using these 9 pills, in using the synthesis toolbox kit, I was able to reverse my liver illness, and today I have a clean bill of health. So as I take us through the series of synthesis, as we delve into creating and listening to the various 5-minute podcasts on epigenetics and eugenics as a pill, which in itself is the 5th tool in the synthesis toolkit, I would like to mention that during my launch on the 15th of February at Burj Khalifa, I did mention that I would like for each of us to have 3 things on our minds whenever we listen to any of my GMASH Speak series. And by the way, I would like you to listen to my launch podcast on my website. It's on my website, www.gmashspeaks.com, and also you can get it from my other website, www.georgemashigo.com, or you could actually check my YouTube channel, George Mashigo. So the 3 things that I would like for us to always consider, and 3 things that are relevant to this particular subject matter, are this. 1. What do we know about epigenetics? 2. What do we need to know about epigenetics? And 3. What can we do with what we learn or know about epigenetics? Now, I've decided to break this particular 5th pill into 2 sections because they're quite large in themselves. So I'm going to go through epigenetics in this particular podcast, and my next podcast I'm going to go through eugenics, but the 2 are interrelated. They lie on each other. So let's get into our synthesis toolbox kit. Let us step into the first of the 2 combos, or the 2 E's in the toolbox kit. We are going to talk about epigenetics here. So as earlier mentioned, and as I regularly state in my introductions to the 9 tools, I will be sharing a series of podcasts on epigenetics. I will be sharing information that I've learned from others. There are mentors that I pride and I gain knowledge from. These are people who have either gone through similar things that I've gone through, or they are just profound in knowledge that I have actually derived from them. But what I've done is that I've taken information that I've personally used in my life to reverse my chronic illnesses. So this epigenetic series will create a discourse in our minds about how we can optimize our lives, how we can change the narratives in our lives by using the epigenetics pills daily, so that we ensure that we manipulate and use the knowledge and then share this knowledge to create and rewire our minds in order for our minds to become the generals and our bodies become the soldiers. I always say, and I believe, that when you think good, you feel good. When you feel good, you do good. So today, we are threading through a very delicate and sensitive tool. It is the one tool that when we get a great understanding of, we move from being a victim to being a master of our destinies, both in the sense of health and wealth. I did state right from the get-go that the moment we understand epigenetics, we will never, ever, ever need the petrochemical pharmaceutical industry ever, ever again. It is going to require a change in not just our physiology, but a change in our mindsets and our philosophies. In this tribe, we are going from victim to mastery, from genetics to epigenetics, okay? And that's why on the screen, you've seen me put out there a display of living above our genes. It's an art, it's a science. I can call it both art and science. It's the art of changing our health and our destinies. Epigenetics in itself is the death of the genetic theory of disease transmission. There is no such thing as genetic transformation. I will go right into it. I don't go ahead of myself, and you can get to see how we can use this theory, how we can use this skill, how we can use this pill to change how we treat ourselves. Okay, so let me try take us through what happens with the theory of genes in a layman's understanding. And we are, after going through this particular podcast, going to have a great understanding of epigenetics. All right, so here we are in our toolbox kit. We have 9 of them, and as we go through this particular tool, this particular pill, we are going to start new conversations. So here's the thing. I'm an architect by training, okay? So as architects, we are trained to work off drawings. I mean, let's call it blueprints. The foundation of this world that we live in is based on what we also call a blueprint. The world exists from a blueprint. And my favorite book of all time tells me that the first thing that was done was creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The world was created from a blueprint. Now, if you do not believe in the existence of God, then I cannot help you. And that is not the subject of discourse here. So as an architect, a blueprint, a design, a plan in itself has no potential in expressing itself. It has no ability in expressing itself. What has to happen is that the contractor who gets the blueprint needs to interpret the blueprint and express it in and as a finished product. Once you have this understanding, you will very easily understand epigenetics. 2 different contractors can express or interpret the same blueprint differently. Contractor or builder A can build a house and finish that house with a dark shade of green, and have the main entrance door open outwards. And from that same blueprint, that same plan, builder B or contractor B can have the same house finished in a different shade of green. Say, for instance, my favorite color, olive green, and have the main entrance of that same house swing, or the main entrance door swing inwards. Now, these are two different interpretations of one blueprint. So was the blueprint faulty? Of course it wasn't. It was the expression of the plan that was the personal interpretation of both contractors. So let me bring this analogy home to our fifth tool in our toolbox kit. That's epigenetics. A gene cannot be a binary. It is neither on or off. But we've been taught differently. We've been socialized. We've been programmed by our system that a gene is either off or on. In the same breath, a blueprint cannot be on or off either. A gene is a blueprint. A gene has in itself no ability to turn itself on or off. A gene doesn't know what it does in itself. So as alluded to in my first statement, when we commenced on this fifth pill in our toolbox kit, I said that there is no gene that causes cancer, and I stand by that, and I'm going to defend this fact. There are only about 7 major common diseases that are caused by one gene disorder, and these are major chronic illnesses such as cystic fibrosis, which is a respiratory or a lung disease, sickle cell anemia, and hemophilia. Both are inherited blood disorders, or cerebral palsy, Tay-Sachs, Huntington's disease, or hemochromatosis. These are diseases of the nervous system, and they're considered as neurological disorders. So if you get, or if you have any of these genes of any of the above, and your gene reading shows that you have this gene, then okay, you've got a gene, and you're going to have to deal with that. However, every other disease or illnesses, be it chronic or non-chronic, are multiple gene disorders. These 7 I've mentioned are single gene disorders. So for instance, type 1 and type 2 diabetes are what we call, or are known as, complex trait diseases, which means that mutations and changes in several genes caused by a complex interplay between genetic, epigenetic, and environmental factors such as diet, physical activity levels, will contribute to type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So it's a series of both internal and external factors which we've allowed, and they've created a state of imbalance in our bodies. And that's when we actually experience type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes. It's a combination of different genes. So just as in diabetes, it's the same as in cancer. Cancer in itself it's a minimum of 12 to 14 genes that need to be altered. So cancer is not an accident. You cannot change one gene and get cancer. Never. So you will have to change 12 to 14 genes, and then all of a sudden, the probability, the chance of getting cancer is there. So it is the environment that the person finds himself or herself in that creates the possibility of the expression of cancer. I need to stress on this. It is your environment that you find yourself in that creates the possibility of the expression of cancer, and cancer is a minimum of 12 to 14 genes that have been altered. Stress, like I mentioned in my first podcast in my toolbox kit, stress is the fundamental cause of these environmental expressions. And one of our purposes here in this tribe is to share and create a discourse that will help us to create homeostasis in our lives so that we do not fall prey into the progressive and degenerative state of chronic illnesses. Multiple cell disorder chronic illnesses are achieved by virtue of staying in a fight or flight situation where the hormones of stress, being the likes of cortisol, which has been given a bad name, cortisol and adrenaline, keep us in more than necessary survival mode most of the time. So you have to be in that state most of the time where you are expressing the hormones of stress, being cortisol and adrenaline. Where adrenaline in itself begins to increase your heart rate, it elevates your blood pressure, while cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone, increases sugar, glucose in your bloodstream. So when as with most people globally, when you spend 70% or more of your life living in survival mode, living in stress, guess what you've done? You've altered the expression of your gene blueprint, because in that state of stress, in that state of survival, you're always anticipating a worst case scenario based on a past experience. Okay, so you can see how and why I'm saying that it's your environment that expresses your genes and that will create in you a possibility of having a chronic illness like cancer. We will need to adopt lifestyle changes. And I do not believe, I'm not an advocate of what we as a people have commercialized as diet. I believe it is only man, it's only we humans that have created different kinds of diets to remain healthy and relevant. And this is mostly where our health challenges spring from, so-called diets. It's only humans who create multiple diets. For crying out loud, elephants don't have a multiple diet. Lions don't have multiple diets. Eagles don't have multiple diets. We have created all these diets to make an industry of them. And these so-called diets, far more often than not, disregard the fundamentals of good nutrition, and they only focus on weight loss. Now, in this tribe, before we get confused, or before I confuse you, in this tribe, we believe in dieting, which in theory consists of a balanced approach to food and nutrients, with care being given to micronutrients. You have to consume micronutrients. When I say micronutrients, what do I mean? I mean microminerals or trace elements, including but not only restricted to iron, chromium, cobalt, copper, iodine, manganese, selenium, zinc, magnesium, etc. These are all micronutrients. Okay, so in dieting, my theory is that we need to consume these micronutrients. And also in dieting, we also need to consider macronutrient consumptions. And by that, I mean looking at what we take in terms of carbohydrates, which is your sugars, okay, or lipids, which is your fats, and the last macronutrient being proteins. So let me get back on the cancer trail, okay? And because cancer is the second major cause of death globally, so it's important for us to look into that. because it's common, it's popular. So if our environment can create a cancer, if by altering our environment and triggering off the 12 to or 14 genes that cause cancer, then it means we can also uncreate cancer. Okay, it doesn't sound right, but excuse me for a minute. So if by altering our environment we can create cancer, then we can also uncreate cancer. Okay, and you must have experienced or heard of people having spontaneous remissions. Okay, so that means that they changed their situation, and this was achieved not by changing their biology only, but by changing the state of their minds. Okay, my favorite book states, as a man thinks continually in his or her heart, so will he or she be. When you think, you build thought, and this become physical substances in your brain, in your body. And when you are present in your thoughts, then you effect changes in your body. And that's why I say, when you think good, you feel good. When you feel good, you do good. So before we get quoted wrongly, let me clarify this. In the world of epigenetics and its effective application, there are two aspects of our genes. Okay, there are genes that make up a physical body. So that's like a robot. Okay, so here it is. It's a machine. It's got body parts. Then there are genes on how the robot is going to behave. So it will be stuff like, how is it going to respond and what kind of issues it's going to face. Now these are the changeable ones. These are the genes that we can change. These are the genes that we can change from day to day through our socialized or resocialized behaviors, through a systematic reprogramming of our software, through a rewiring of our neurons. So being truly present in our minds, we then begin to install this hardware, neurological hardware in our brains. And when we keep doing it, when we keep doing that, when we keep priming it that way, our brains, the hardware then becomes a software program. And who knows, we being in a state of awareness, we will just start altering the state of our health, change the state of our being when we are fully aware of the consequences of our behavior. And when we begin to change the culture medium and environment that we allow ourselves to stay in. At that point, at the point of altering our culture medium and environment, this is when the mind becomes the general and the body is subject to being the soldier. Okay. Whenever and however we do this, altering the state of our being, it is not changing the genes that actually happens. You can't change your genes. It's changing the readout, the expression of the genes. So a simple point, like mentioned above, we must think above the gene theory and philosophy. We must think epigenetically. We realize that a gene is a blueprint. Once we realize that, then we are beginning to understand the realm of epigenetics. This biggest challenge that we as a people face in our world is the idea of a gene being an illusion to a lot of us. We begin to understand, or we have been socialized to believe that a gene is either turned on or turned off. In the systems we have grown in, especially the first 7 years of our development, we are literally mirroring everything around us. We've been given the belief and the idea that our genetic blueprint has this immense power that our genes can be either bad or good, and our genes can be either turned on or off. That is bull crap. In the world of genes and epigenetics, this power given to a blueprint has been an error all these years. And we need to change that. We need to reprogram our minds. It is not the blueprint that we're concerned about. It's the contractor who reads the blueprint that we should be concerned about. In our human biology, who is that contractor? In our human biology, the contractor is the mind. What makes our genes express themselves is the environment. Our genes expression depends on the mind. It depends on the environment. The cells in our bodies express themselves based on the adjustment of the environment the body is subjected to. So, change the environment, change the cultural medium, change the contractor, change the mind, then the cells adjust and change their expressions. The cells changes its readout. This in essence, and this is the essence of this tribe. When you think good, you feel good. When you feel good, you do good. I cannot overemphasize that phrase. So a so-called genetic expression amongst a group of individuals is the expression of the elements or chemistry of that culture medium in that particular environment that the group of people find themselves in. That particular environment which these people are exposed to will be the expression of the genes. So epigenetics is the belief that through your behavior, through your environment, you can alter the reading and expression of your genes. This again is where and why we are building a new tribe. Big Pharma runs the show in medicine. And if we can put these 9 synthesis tools into a pill, if we can, if you could put these pills into our consciousness, this kind of healing that we're talking about, if you could put it into a capsule, into a tablet, it will shut down the pharmaceutical industry. Big Pharma will shut down. But is that possible? It is not possible, guys, because it's a huge industry with the global market for Big Pharma reaching 1.2 trillion in the year 2018, which is up from 2017 by 100 billion. Big Pharma will never let the right philosophies through the front door. So what do we need to do? We need to go in through the back door, through creating a community, a tribe, and creating a new philosophy, because somebody's philosophy informs what they do. Buddhists do what they do because of their philosophy. Muslims do what they do because of their philosophy. Born-again Christians do what they do because of their philosophy. Politicians do what they do because of their philosophy. So everybody does what they do because of their underpinnings in philosophy. However, when it comes to matters of optimal health, we are not taught this in school. So what do? We put our lives in the hands of the keepers of the soon to reach 1.4 trillion pharmaceutical castle. So who are the keepers? The keepers are the MDs. So we put our lives rather in the hands of the MDs. And you just think that your medical doctor, God bless their hearts, you think that their best practices in medicine is everything that is good. Well, it is not. So let us get perspective in our discourse here. The treatment of chronic diseases is not the thing of the medical doctor. It's not, because if it was, we'll be getting better, we'll be getting healthier, but we're not. We're getting sicker, we're getting worse. And the blame has been put strategically on bad genes. It is being put on a generation getting older. It is being put on being more difficult to identify and treat genetic illnesses. That's why people are pumping so much money into cancer treatment. That is all bull crap. When all you have is a hammer, everything around you looks like a nail. So even though in point of fact, you may not need surgery, the surgeon most undoubtedly will tell you that you do, because from their perspective, you do. Now, because they don't know any better, that's what they will recommend to you. I mean, I will ask you this question. Would you let a chiropractor do open heart surgery on you? Of course you wouldn't. Why not? A chiropractor is awesome in their own thing, but open heart surgery is not the thing for a chiropractor. That is the stable of the medical doctor, and the medical doctors are geniuses in that. The things that they can do in the theater or in the theaters are remarkable and unbelievable. So here is me closing in on the epigenetics part of my E and A theory. And when I close on that part, I'm going to introduce the next part of my E and E. It's eugenics. Learning about epigenetics, walking through the 9 pills in the toolbox, taking us into the next part, eugenics, will give us optimal 5-star health and wealth. Taking these pills on a daily basis, dowsing on these pills on a daily basis, and having the presence of mind will take us into having optimal 5-star health and wealth. I am definitely convinced about that. So here we are. We have taken time to talk about epigenetics. We've taken time to learn on epigenetics. We've gone through different parts of this particular toolbox kit. We've gone through sleep, we've gone through stress, we've gone through exercise, we've gone through nutrition. Now we are going through epigenetics, and this will give us optimal health like every other pill in the toolbox, be it sleep, be it exercise, be it nutrition. Okay, so now, having introduced epigenetics, having spoken about this particular toolbox or this particular tool in my toolbox kit, I'm going to lead us to the next podcast on eugenics. But before I do that, I would like to leave us with this thought. I would like to leave us with a number of what ifs, because it's going to spiral or take us into the next podcast, the eugenics podcast. What if the pharmaceuticals are wrapped and roped in with the eugenics strategy? What if? What if we are all being subjected to illnesses especially the chronic ones, because we have low immunities. And there is a systematic, bigger scheme of things where we are being targeted as the next group for elimination. What if for the last 40 years plus, the English, the Americans, the Canadians, the Australians, and of course the African governments, or whichever government that you might fall under, what if in their ignorance they have been lying to us to protect the $1.2 trillion big pharma industry? Because in doing that, they protect their profits. In doing that, they protect themselves from lawsuits. Okay, we had lawsuits against Monsanto, and they paid out top dollar for each of those lawsuits. What if essentially we are just being fed a bag of lies, and this government are being protected by the big brother, WHO? What if we are just being set up for an eugenics clean-out? I will be stopping on that note. Having introduced the first E in the 5th toolbox kit of epigenetics and eugenics, I will now close on this note. And in closing on this note on epigenetics, I'll be introducing the next E, which is eugenics. As a complement to my assertions that there is a concerted plan to roll out a eugenics program using this time not biological weapons like we're currently experiencing with the corona virus. It's going to be a worse weapon. It's going to be a military weapon that will gradually stress our genes and cause multiple genes to be mutated if we do not have a conscious effort to protect ourselves by building our immunity. Our immunity are our soldiers. Our immunity are our white blood cells. So that is what I'm going to take us through. In protecting our immunity, in building our immunity, we are going to step into eugenics. That's going to be next up in our conversations. Eugenics. Please check my website www.gmashspeaks.com, or you could check my other website www.georgemashigo.com, or you could check my YouTube channel, George Mashigo, for the podcast I'm going to give next on eugenics as we progress across the 9 tools in the Synthesis Toolbox Kit. Thank you so much for taking your time and listening to my discourse on epigenetics. Please click on the next link you see. Eugenics. You need to fasten your seatbelt on this particular discourse. It's going to blow your mind. Thanks so much, and God bless. Cheers.